The Tokyo Xtreme Racer series is a bit notorious with how demanding its 100% requirements can be at times. From Wanderers requiring you to drive for over 3,000 in-game miles, to other Wanderers requiring that you achieve an entire year in the game's day count before they'll give you a chance to race them. These absolute cryptids will ask you to do some goofy things all in the name of 100% completion. In this video, I'll be completing TXR Zero 100% from the humble beginning to the grueling end, all the while highlighting every Wanderer and their requirements for your convenience. Let's begin. We start the game off by purchasing our soulmate for this playthrough, which is a Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 3. Like the Celica of the Toyota playthrough, this bad boy will be able to take us all the way from the beginning to the end if we play our cards right. Obviously, it will not be the only car we will have and use, but it will be what leads us through the Devils and the Zodiacs. Before we finalize the purchase, however, we make sure to set our license plate prefecture to Naniwa, so we can prepare for a Wanderer ahead of time. We are left with practically no money to our name, so the only thing we can really do is head out to start slapping around some of the competition. Stage 1 is pretty easy with the Evo, with the first few teams we beat proving to be quite the pushovers as we run through them. Whenever we get a decent influx of money, we make sure to spend it on whatever upgrades we can afford, obviously. We quickly defeat two team leaders, which forces Trader Jackknife to come out and get absolutely rocked and socked with minimal blocking required. He gives us a good chunk of money to splash on more upgrades, and we continue to tear through Stage 1. It is here that our first Wanderer appears, that being Lightning. His requirements are very simple, as he appears on days that are a multiple of 3 on the C1 inner loop. He is beaten very quickly, which is great news, as Wanderers give much better cash awards than most other rivals, save for maybe the bosses of course. After defeating the 3 Stage 1 teams on the inner loop, we move to outer to make some more progress. Beating Curving Edge immediately nets us a 1v1 against True Slide, and this race was actually much more challenging than Jackknife, but we managed to squeeze out the victory in the end. Nothing's quite over yet though, as Unhappy Angel appears to try and kick us in the balls as hard as she can. We respectfully decline this session of CBT, however, and put her SP in the negatives, giving us the win and access to Stage 2. Stage 2 gives us access to the Shinkan Joe, and a bunch of new rivals to steal the cash money moolah from. We can't really focus down on the Wanderers quite just yet, since we're still broke as a joke, but we can snipe some Wanderers here and there if we pay attention to their requirements. As we beat a bunch of teams and rivals in Stage 2, we run into White Panther on the C1 inner, who has the simple requirement of the day being a multiple of 5. He's got a bit of fight in him, but nothing we can't overcome with our gaming prowess and skill, really. We also take some time out of our day to visit Illusion B and his bummy fitment on the C1 outer, with the requirement being that he appears on days that are multiple of 3. Get used to this, there's a bunch of bastards that have these goofy multiples of X requirements. He's a complete non-issue to beat though, so we move onwards. We also run into Mosquito Lemon on the Shinkanjo counterclockwise route, whose requirement is that we beat Red Shadow from Team Rat. Seeing as we already obliterated that entire imbecilic little team, we get our request to race accepted. Mosquito Lemon quickly gets dropped as well, as we run away with an easy win. Once the number of days had reached 7, we prepare to take on Garage Door by switching out our license plate prefecture for Shinagawa. His requirement is that he appears on days that are a multiple of 7, and also only accepts battles from people running Shinagawa, Adachi, or Nerima plates. In the end, his Supra fell pretty quickly and we cross off yet another Wanderer off of our list. We do run into Machine of Inferno as well, but we do not fulfill their requirements yet, so we ignore them in favor of succulent game progression. The next Wanderer we beat is incredibly important, however, as that Wanderer is Street Gambler, who appears on the Shinkanjo counterclockwise route when every digit in the day is identical. For example, day 11, day 22, 999, etc. What this essentially means is the longer you take to beat this guy, the longer it'll take for him to appear again. If you decide to 100% this game, make sure to try and beat this guy on day 11, otherwise it'll be a while before you can see him again. God forbid you try and get him to spawn when your days contain 3 digits. While he does have a unique custom car, it's a pretty slow car overall for the most part, so he goes down relatively easily. Eventually, after beating a whole bunch of teams on the C1 and the Shinkanjo, Hard Weapon arrives to try and slime us out. He's much more of a challenge than the Stage 1 bosses right off the bat, but by blocking the shit out of him and not allowing him to pass us on the straightaways, our victory is secured. We make sure to upgrade our car whenever we defeat a boss as well, to get any little advantage we can before we head out onto the night. We happen upon an invincible artist in Yaesu, the little subsection of the C1 inner, who appears when you multiply the tens digit and the ones digit of the day together, and if the ones digit of the final result is a 2, he will spawn. For a simple example, we met him on day 12. Multiply 1 with 2, which is 2, hence he'll spawn. I genuinely have no fucking clue how people figured this out back in the day, but regardless, he's a complete pushover and gets absolutely violated by our beefy Evo. After defeating Tabi of Dry Cruise, Fallen Blade finally comes out to try and halt our game progression with his Gloria. He is almost successful in this endeavor, but we're cracked out of our mind in this video game, so we snatch a comeback and slap his bald head so hard it makes the Taco Bell sound. All this bald head slappage doesn't resonate well with Bloodhound, however, but it doesn't matter. We piledrive his DTM ripoff right into the dirt where it belongs, and wrap stage 2 up on a very high note. We move on to stage 3 after having beaten Bloodhound and his sedan gang and seek out Anguish Barbarian, who is parked on Yaesu on the C1 outer loop. He spawns when the result of multiplying the tens and ones digit of the day as the ones digit of the result be a 4. We face him on day 14, so you get the idea. He gets shit on very quickly. Beating a few teams immediately nets us a fight with Dark Producer, or Lucifer Otsuka as he's properly called. After a close battle, we lose, and we tear out our hairline before trying once more. We lose once more, causing us to shave our eyebrows off afterwards. If I lose one more goddamn time, I will become the strange creature that lurks in the woods. Luckily this doesn't come to fruition, and we secure the victory and our sanity for another day. Since it's day 14, we find Craftman wandering around on the clockwise route of the Shinkanjo. His requirements are that the day must be a multiple of 7, and we must have a completely blacked out color on our car, aka 0, 0, 0 on the RGB values. He drives the 240Z, so he's very easy pickings for us. We also run into Lost Freak, but don't meet his requirements at the moment since we're too broke to really be splashing money on multiple cars at the moment, so we move on. Instead, we find a different wanderer by the name of Fearful Princess on the counterclockwise Shinkanjo route. Her requirements are that we challenge her with 100,000 in our wallet. A quick race later, we write her off of our 2B in a race list and continue to progress through the game. After beating a bunch of teams, we also come across Storm Screamer, whose requirement is a very simple one. Be Rainmaster from Dry Cruise, and he'll be driving around waiting for your challenge. He's in a 180SX, though he doesn't put up much of a challenge to us, really. After fucking barely squeezing out a win against Io from Tokyo Jungle, Sitar Kaneyama appears to try and cut a cylindrical hole in us, preheat us to a warm but not hot state, and do nefarious things to us. He's a complete garbage bin dumpster fire racer, however, so he loses to us in our first attempt. This prompts Steelheart to come out and try and avenge his 2 jobbers with his fat ass A80 Supra, which he does. Fuck. After trying again, we come out victorious, so we only lightly kick him in the balls for causing us mental distress earlier as payback. With a new engine upgrade in tow, we move towards stage 4 with the final devils in our sight. We start off stage 4 by trouncing a bunch of rivals until we eventually come out onto the clockwise Shinkanjo route, meeting Raspberry Kiss and her E36. Her requirement is that the day be a multiple of 10, so she's very easy to pick off in a playthrough. We make quick work of her German shitbox and move on with our playthrough. On day 23, we meet our homie Caffeine Addict, whose requirement is for the day to have a number 3 in it somewhere, for example 23, 311, etc. We share 2 Red Bulls and 3 C4s with him before smoking him in a race, leaving us with a great feeling in our chest consisting of intense heart palpitations and shortness of breath. Soon afterwards, after the defeat of Departures comes Dying Star and his pimped out GTO, ready to tear us a new one. However, this walking nerd emoji of a man instead gets his ass absolutely torn to such a degree that he must walk like a penguin for the rest of his life. We also make sure to visit Shinkanjo clockwise to take out Cutie Pie, whose requirement is that we hold $300,000 to our name. Her FTO isn't much to really talk about here, and she gets dusted very easily. We also finally find Green Wild, who was the reason we put Naniwa plates before we hopped out onto the Shinkanjo counterclockwise. He appears on days that are a multiple of 7 and accepts your challenge only if your plates are from Naniwa. His MRS is a complete pushover though, especially on this side of the map, so we deal with him quickly and continue on. After beating the Gesellschaft team, Dreamy Ghost appears to dream about obliterating our supple gamer cheeks. And it turns out it's his lucky day, since he does just that. We get washed in a straight line acceleration battle and re-challenge him immediately afterwards. This time, who am I kidding, we get our shit rocked again. The NSX is an absolute demon in this game, and Dreamy Ghost and Golden Wind will make sure you remember this fact. The third time around, he pushes us to crash into a family of 3 and die screaming. Fourth attempt. The next night, we beat a bunch of rivals before he appears once more. However, this time we just simply beat him first try. I'm convinced John Genki is somewhere in my system, turning several dials and knobs to fuck with me by randomizing the difficulty of this game sometimes. There is a pest inside my computer. Anyway, we finally run into Wild Heart, who appears on the counterclockwise Shinkanjo route every 3 days, with the requirement being that you hold 100 wins to your name. Despite his ass sitting in an NSX, we make quick work of him and move on to better things. We can find a Lonely Wolf roaming around on the C1 inner loop. Since he's on inner, he is shit at cornering, so we dispose of his fraudulent cheeks immediately. On day 34, we quickly run into Silver Ruler on the Shinkanjo clockwise route, was half the reason we picked the Evo as our starter car. His requirement is that he appears on days with the number 3 in them, and only accepts if you drive a Mitsubishi, which we indeed do. He gets rocked and socked accordingly, obviously. Since the day count is above 30 now, we swap over to the C1 outer to find our favorite Gooner absolutely demolishing it to some questionable material. We do not desire to be demonetized, so we quickly throw all of his material into a nearby fire and snatch the win from his gooey population pudding filled hands. Yuck. As we clear out a bunch of teams on Yokohane, we run into Silent Barbarian headed northbound, whose requirement is that we beat Storm Screamer. He's not incredibly difficult or fast, but this asshole loves to do nothing but block for the entire race like a mosquito. We do manage to weave his blocking quickly though, and procure a gamer Dubsky. Soon after, we clear out the final Yokohane team and Shadow Eyes comes along to try and stop us dead in our tracks. Blocking her one attempt at an overtake, we immediately snatch her chain and the win is ours, leaving us with just one devil left before the big man himself. We rotate onto the Wangan soon enough, and luckily our Evo can hit about 200 miles per hour here, so we're good for the most part. We quickly find Madness lurking about on the south route, whose requirement is beating Lonely Survivor from Team Gesellschaft. The GameFAQs guide states so, and he did accept my challenge all the time in every playthrough, so this requirement should be accurate. Regardless, he's no challenge whatsoever and we slime him out quick. After beating all the teams headed southbound, we rotate to the Wangan northbound route on day 48 and run relatively quickly into Max Energy, who appears when we take the first and second digits of the day and multiply them together, and if the ones digit is a 2, he spawns. Again, stupid math requirements. He's also parked at the Showajima junction, so keep that in mind. He'll challenge you if you simply pass him by. He's an easy rival for the most part though, so we move on. King of Eden appears on Yokohane northbound every 7 days, and considering we're at day 49, we look for him and find him immediately. His Savannah is a complete pushover though. However, we do start to struggle on the Wangan against some of the higher tier rivals that drive R34s and GTOs, so we finally decide to pull the trigger on some money and acquire ourselves a Dodge Viper for our troubles. Aside from the Viper being an absolute weapon on the straightaways, it will be needed for several wonder requirements in the future, so we solve multiple problems at once. Since we just got a new car, this means we can go after a few wonders that get off on you having very low miles on a car. First up, Dark Desperado on Shinkanjo counterclockwise, who wants you to start the night off with a car that has less than 31 miles on its odometer. His Alteza cannot even graze the power of our American monster, so we rid ourselves of his filth immediately. After that, Godyear on Shinkanjo clockwise, who wants you to start the night with less than 124 miles on your current car, and also asks you to have a level N exhaust equipped on your car. Level N is just stock parts, by the way. Even with the reduced power in our Viper, he stands absolutely no chance and gets manhandled. Next up, Unbalanced Heart on Wangan South, who has the same requirements as Dark Desperado, aka Night Start with the current car having less than 31 miles. Much like Dark Desperado, he gets butchered without a shred of a chance to contest us in a straight line. Call Free is also on the same route and appears every 3 in-game days, with the requirement that you drive a Viper specifically for him. I have no clue why this clown thinks he can take a Viper in an S13, but regardless, we leave a dent in his forehead and continue. On the Yokohama southbound, we snipe out Gold License, whose requirement is that we beat Dark Desperado. Simple enough requirement, and their R30 is a complete pushover to boot, so no worries there. After all these wanderers, we finally decide to refocus our attention back towards beating the last of the Devils. After beating one of the final teams on the Wangan, Tailgunner finally arrives with his wacky-ass RX-7 to try and put us in our place. In the first 10 seconds, he randomly decides to just fucking explode, and we get what is probably the world record for beating his ass at about 18 seconds. What the fuck even happened? I have no clue. Whatever the case may be, all the Devils are down for the count, and the big man finally arrives. Jintei, or Speed King if you prefer. Our first attempt goes as you would expect, with our cheeks getting absolutely blown up by his overwhelming speed and gaming prowess. We're not idiots, however, and we immediately head back to the garage to swap out for the Evo and re-challenge him on the C1. This race is pretty intense, even if it doesn't last long. During the race, he crashes into traffic ahead of us, and we thread the fucking needle to squeeze through between him and said traffic. Afterwards, he is unable to make up the difference, and soon enough, our domination over the 13 Devils is solidified. Stage 4 comes to an end, and we finally move on to the next stage, where the Zodiacs await our challenge. Stage 5 is pretty huge for us for multiple reasons. Aside from giving us tons of new rivals to beat, we also get 3 million for beating Jintei, which finally allows us to start buying up some cars for specific wanderers. The first of these that we go for is the MRS, as we will need it for Lost Freak. Every car we buy, we of course upgrade as much as we can, since we have the money to throw around. Speaking of him, we find him roaming around on day 63 on the C1 Inner. His requirements is that the day must be a multiple of 7, and we must have beaten the garage door, and we have to drive an MRS. For such a stingy bastard, he does live up to his requirements, as he breaks our ass in half the first time around. He has the secret mileage parts, so it's why his MRS is simply much faster than ours. Regardless, the second round goes much better, and we slap his freaky mouth shut and claim our victory. Because we've beaten Lost Freak, we return back to the garage and head out once more for the inner loop to now find Bloody Mary, and her requirements are that we must beat Lost Freak. She does drive a Viper, but the C1 loop is not a good place for it, so we take our win relatively easily. We also find Speed Drinker soon enough, whose requirements state that we must beat Illusion B and Speed King before he shows up on the C1 Inner. He drives an S14 just like his green bestie, so he loses to us immediately and gets crossed off the list. After beating both of the teams on Inner, Midnight Rose appears to try and push our shit in. However, you might have noticed I said try and not succeed. This is because she is dealt with very swiftly, because we are absolute demons for these buffoons whenever there's a corner in this game. We head back to the garage and notice that the PS2 clock says 9 PM, which means we can catch Master position on the C1 Outer. His requirements want the PS2 clock to be between 9 PM to 11 PM, and also you must drive a non-Japanese car. Our Viper fits the bill, and also fits our fist so deep in his ass that he has to become a hand puppet. All this is to say, we beat his ass. We head back and buy a CRX to prepare for a specific wanderer in the future, and make sure to max it out as well. We'll need a front-wheel drive car, so I chose the CRX as it is the cheapest one, and it will serve us decently for what we want to do with it. After beating both teams on the C1 Outer, Golden Wind is here to greet us with his bum-ass NSX. However, since he is a bum, he gets absolutely demolished by our Evo's prowess. On day 70, our CRX comes into play as we look for Machine of Inferno while driving it on C1 Outer. His requirements are that the day must be a multiple of 10 and that we drive a front-wheel drive car when we challenge him. While the CRX doesn't have too much power, it's lightweight as shit, so it puts him in the dirt and nets us another juicy win. Since we've taken care of the two Zodiacs roaming the C1, we move on to Shinkanjo counterclockwise and find Eternity waiting for us, whose requirements are that we must hold 1 million to our name. She gets handled and we move on rapidly to make progress. After beating some team leaders on the counterclockwise side of the Shinkanjo, Dark Ringleader and his sick-ass 180 are here to mop the floor with us. What instead happens is we witness a genuine live leak video of him eating the entire Ginza barrier behind us, giving us an incredibly quick win in under half a minute. On day 72, we head out onto the counterclockwise Shinkanjo route to look for Dumb Yet Smart, who has some weird fucking requirements. First, the 2 digits of the day must be multiplied and have the 1's digit of the result be a 4. Then, you must drive a 2-seater. Then, you must drive in front of him so he challenges you, otherwise he does not accept. Once again, the Viper does fulfill the car criteria, and he gets packed up very quick indeed. After blasting the 2 team leaders on Shinkanjo clockwise, Hard Riff arrives in his S15 to get his shit slapped silly. After he eats a fat loss, Blue Pressure and his dripped out car arrive to try and salvage the situation at hand to no avail, as we slapbox his teeth out of his jaw and take another win home. The first 5 Zodiacs are taken care of, and so we move onwards. On day 77, we change the area on our license plate of the Viper to Shonan and depart for the C1 inner loop to find Pretty Affair wandering about. Requirements? Appears every 7th day after you've defeated the Speed King, and only accepts if your license plate has Shonan on it. We have a Pretty Affair with his wife right in front of him and take home a victory royale. Just kidding on the affair part, we are not homebreakers. We do not condone ruining the sanctity of marriages here on the Rolling Reaper channel. Anyway, we decide to buy another car or another Wanderer. This car might surprise you, as it is the Mitsubishi Eclipse, but specifically the 2000s variant. We max it out and drip it out in resemblance to a certain rival from another franchise, before embarking onto the Wangan northbound route to look for Healthy Hero, whose requirements are that we challenge him in a 2000s car that has less than 124 miles on its odometer. We find him and deal with his wacky ass R30 accordingly, before realizing a very special Wanderer is up for grabs now. Since it's between midnight and 1 AM on our PS2 clock, you can take a guess as to who we are after. We finally catch Midnight Cinderella wandering the Wangan northbound route. She only appears here between midnight and 1 AM, so we make the most of this opportunity and ask her out on a race. She absolutely tops and doms us in the first attempt, not that I'm complaining, before switching with us and getting conquered and domed herself by us on our second attempt. Life is wonderful. After dealing with Midnight Cinderella, we decide to get the big money Wanderer out of the way so we can open the door to some more money spending. Windy Fanfare is up next, and they roam Yokohama southbound. The requirement is that we must hold 3 million to our name. We find her rather quickly and hand her an L before heading back to start spending more money on cars. The next car we buy is an RX-7 FD, with specifically the in-game name of the FD3RS. This will be useful for Jet Skater, a certain Wanderer we'll be facing later on. We also note that this is our 6th car that we own, meaning we can challenge Wastemaster on the C1 outer route, whose requirement is that we own a total of 6 cars. His fuck ugly ass S15 cannot hang with us whatsoever, and he gets blasted. We head back and notice that it is 1 AM on the PS2 clock, which means we can head out onto the Shinkanjo clockwise route to find Nightwolf roaming around. His requirements are that the PS2 clock reads between 1 AM and 3 AM. With him being one of the bosses from TXR1, he is deservedly fast, but nothing that can't really be handled by our trusty Evo. We pack him up and move on to the next requirement. We buy the 240Z and max it out, before also buying a regular NSX and maxing it out as well. We'll need these two in the future, so take note. The 240Z immediately comes into play when we decide to visit Crying Baby on the Wangan North route. His requirements are that the day is a multiple of 3, that we defeat Speed King, and that we drive a 240Z. First attempt, we get smoked out, because even maxed out, this car is painfully slow and horrible to drive with lots of oversteer, and there's no corners to slow his 300ZX down either. On our next attempt, we get the victory from him after a long and arduous battle, not with him, mind you, but with the goddamn car. Fuck me, does this thing blow. While racing some of the Speedmaster bozos to wrap up the Yokohama teams, we get the idea to finally pull the trigger on buying up lots of cars for a few wanderers we need to cross off. This process is boring as shit and takes long as hell, but by using select when buying a car, you can skip the whole naming and plate select part to save lots of time. Shout out to the Eagle 4K for this advice, because I genuinely had no clue. Anyway, after buying up 8 6s until we have 25 cars total, we get to work. First up, we go after Glamour Girl on the Shinkanjo clockwise, whose requirement is that we hold 25 cars total in our garage. Her fat ass sedan is no match for us and gets taken care of immediately. After that, we head out onto the Wangan southbound section to look for a technician guy, whose requirement is that we own 10 cars in our garage. Once again, our Evo stands on business and takes care of said business. Finally, we decide to start wrapping up the regular rivals to chase out the remaining Zodiac and bring this stage to a close as well. After beating Speedmaster, Queen's Knight is here with a horribly fucking aged hood decal that really puts them in a terrible light. Regardless, the Yokohama holds enough corners to slow him down and give us the win. After Queen's Knight comes my goat, Purple Meteor, looking to claim our head. He does just that, and we lose a total of 2 times to him before we call it quits and retreat to our domain. We decide to swap out to our 240Z to challenge Iron Racer on the Yokohama southbound. His requirements mandate that the day be a multiple of 5, and we drive either the Type KPG C10, the RX3, or the S30Z. The 240Z fits the bill, so off to the races we go. After a battle against our own goddamn car, we eventually slide away with a win in our hands and a Wanderer crossed off. After that, we swap back to the Evo and challenge Purple Meteor again, and we proceed to speedrun his bitch ass immediately. Looking to avenge her friends, Exotic Eve arrives to try and put a stop to our shenanigans. Obviously she is no match for us and gets folded like an omelette. That's all the Zodiacs on the Yokohama, so time for the Wangan. After barely beating Team Abflug's crackhead 911, No Crown King arrives to take our crown instead. He succeeds in this and we feel pretty shitty about it, so we try again. We snatch our crown back immediately and then get challenged by Crying Pluto. Of course, Crying Pluto can continue to cry about it as we run away with yet another W for ourselves, prompting my goat, Red Devil, and his Zaku to take action regarding us. It lives up to his name as this guy's a fucking demon and a half, and we get smoked the first time around. We then get smoked again. Shit. Luckily, the third try goes way better and we take care of the final Zodiac before the big boy himself, White Riz. As expected, we get fucking curb stomped immediately. We try 2 more times and get shit on from such a height that it's embarrassing. We retreat and apply all the upgrades we just unlocked from the last few Zodiacs, worrying not, we'll not be going after White Charisma in the NSX, we're just taking care of a Wanderer really quickly. This is Speedbox. He drives around on Yokohama South, and his requirements are that we be Iron Racer, drive an NSX, and he also only appears every 5th in-game day. This lawnmower versus lawnmower battle goes swimmingly for us, and we quickly knock his shit loose before heading back to garage. We challenge White Charisma on the C1, a classic strategy that always works, but this time... Yeah, no, it worked. I tell you, this shit always works. He is no match for us in the corners, and we absolutely dominate his ass and snatch his bag for ourselves, crowning ourselves faster than the Devils and the Zodiacs. It's not enough, though. Only the Wanderers remain now, so let's get to work. Mask is up, and he is parked on the side of the road at the Showajima Junction on Yokohama southbound. Multiply the 10s and the 1s digit of the day, and if the 1s digit of the final result is a 2, he'll be there to greet you. Seeing as we face him on day 112, you get the point. Anyway, his shitbox is nothing to us, and he gets slimed. Next up, Fast Fold, who is parked at the Haneda Junction on Wangan southbound. Same bullshit as Mask, but the 1s digit of the result needs to be a 4 instead. Day 114, we find him. We beat his ass. After this, we decide to buy a 911 for the love of the game, since money is not an issue whatsoever for us anymore, and because it's one of the fastest cars in the game. Not like we ended up using it much for the playthrough, but hey, it made a viewer happy, and that's good enough for me. We raced a few rivals with it maxed out to reach 250 miles per hour during the race, which is important for a specific wanderer. We run into Exotic Butterfly on Yokohama North, and her requirement is that we beat White Charisma. Simple enough, but she's far too slow for what her requirement asks of us. Whatever, a win is a win. Afterwards, we finally find Last Flight, whose requirement is that the day must be a multiple of 10, we must have beaten Team Alpha, and we need to finish at least one race while driving over 250 miles per hour. This is why we raced those rivals earlier. While he does drive a 911, it cannot even compare to our absolute demon, so the win is ours, and only very few wanderers remain. Alright, so for the last few wanderers, we need to do some really annoying shit that I honestly have no clue how Genki thought those requirements were fun. First, we need to grind out over 3,107 miles total, and we also need to make sure we get the mileage parts on one of our cars as well. This we will do with our Evo. Here's the sauce. Head out, win a race, and once you reach the screen where you can choose to continue to roam around or to head to garage, go AFK. Eventually, the game will go into autopilot, and while this autopilot is active, the game will still count the miles for your car. On native hardware, this will still be an incredibly slow, tedious, and boring process, but at least you won't have to force yourself to drive in-game constantly every day to rack up miles. However, if you're on PCSX2, which I am, if you hit F4, it will remove the FPS limit and the game will run at a much faster rate, allowing you to farm miles much faster than otherwise. This still took a few days to rack up miles, but only because I was farming 1 to 2 hours per day this way. Once we did this, we not only had the requirements for all the mileage wanderers, but also got the mileage parts that turned our Evo into an absolute screamer of a car, which was incredibly helpful. After we got the miles, the next thing we had to do was get about 360 in-game days. There is no real cheese track here, however. Hop onto the road, load in, hop back out, repeat. Once again, I removed the FPS limit for this process to go by much faster, but it was still fairly tedious. We also made sure that the in-game clock was between 2 and 4 AM for a certain wanderer. Soon enough, we had all we needed to wrap up all the wanderers left and to eliminate the demon that haunts this expressway. First up was Steamstorm on C1 Inner, whose requirements read that the day count must exceed 180 days and that we must challenge him with a non-Japanese car. Once again, the Viper was here to show this guy who's boss. After that, we chased down my favorite wanderer in the entire series, Devil Driver, who's the reason I have Reaper in the channel name. Anyway, his requirement reads that we must have our total mileage exceed 1,243 miles, and that the PS2 clock time reads between 2 and 4 AM. While he is decently fast, the corners slow him down and our maxed out Evo dog walks him in every possible way, granting us a win. After Devil Driver comes Roadmaster on the Shinkanjo counterclockwise, whose requirement states that we must have driven over 3,107 miles total. This requirement is fucking stupid, and I don't think this guy ever even returns in the series after this game. So, what the fuck? Regardless, his bitch ass gets dealt with, and we move on. Another mileage-based wanderer we mop the floor with is Uncrushable Alexander, on the Shinkanjo clockwise, who asks that our currently driven car must have over 1,860 miles driven in it. We farmed the miles with the Evo only, so this is no problem, and his R30 gets crushed entirely. Another wanderer with the exact same requirement for some reason is Gentle Rain on Yokohama North, whose requirement is genuinely the exact same, 1,860 miles on the currently driven car. What the fuck? Anyway, his RX-3 is slow as shit, so he can only watch us blitz him completely. Tomorrow again on Wangan North has some stupid fucking requirements, but bear with me. First, he only appears when the tens and ones digit of the current day are multiplied, and the result's ones digit is a 4. Second, you must have 1,860 miles once again on your current goddamn car. And third is that you must have a level 8 exhaust equipped, which we do, as that's the secret mileage part. If nothing else, at least his car looks cool as fuck. Doesn't stop him from getting gapped and slapped though. Loyal Knight from Yokohama North also has some whack-ass requirements and also an emblem ripped straight from a creepypasta. His requirement is that we must have beaten Gentle Rain, have a level N engine equipped, which is stock by the way, and he only appears on days that have a number 3 in them. Considering we're past day 365, this day requirement is pretty chill at the moment. Anyway, his 2000 GTR gets bagged and tagged and we proceed on. Remember the RX-7 FD we bought before? Well, it's time to let that fucker rip as we track down Jet Skater on Wangan northbound on day 371. His requirements are that he only appears every 7 days, we must exceed a total mileage of 1243, and we must drive a Type FD3 RS or Cinderella's custom RX-7. Our RX-7 is fast as fuck though, so he gets slapped around and packed up. 2 Wanderers left, so let's do this. Zero appears on Wangan southbound once the day count exceeds 365, aka an entire year. While the requirement is fucking annoying, this guy can back his requirement up with how fast he is. However, his speed cap seems pretty fucking shit for some reason, so we win the top speed battle and take home the win. The final Wanderer is Start Dash on Yokohama South, whose requirement is that our day count must exceed 180 days. Not much to say here, nothing can really contend with our Evo at this point, so we take care of this guy fast and wrap up the final Wanderer of this game. Oh my fucking god! Alright, he can move. I'm not gonna lie, he's fast. Oh. Right, we're ahead. Oh, he crashed. Is this a win? Yeah, the final race was disappointing. Well, he was fast as fuck initially. Halfway through the race, he crashes into a truck, and then later on crashes into another traffic car right behind us, chunking his SP bar and causing him to not be able to make up the difference in the end, giving us a win. Still, the journey finally comes to a close, and we inherit the title, the Demon of the Expressway. All that's left now is to buy a blue R34 GTR and get a glitchy aura and haunt the Yokohama section of the map specifically, and we will be good to go. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll get some things out of the way immediately. Yes, the Toyota Marathon is cancelled, sadly. I can't say much other than 40+ minute vids are very difficult to do when you're scripting and editing and also streaming 5 days a week. I basically got burnt out, so I'm switching my release schedule to monthly. Though I'm not even sure on that anymore, because what is also happening is I've got very important university stuff to tend to. And I'm kind of on a time limit now, so I must get that wrapped up as soon as possible. I might stop streaming suddenly, possibly sometime near the end of February, or towards the beginning of March. Rest assured, once I manage to finally sort some IRL stuff out, and manage to get a place to call my own, I'll try and get back into the swing of things. Sorry in advance. I don't know what video will be next up or when it will even happen, since circumstances are kind of difficult right now. But I will try and come back to this as soon as I am able to. Thank you so much for watching once again, and have a great one. Cheers!